Welcome to But Jesus Drank Wine.
And other stories that kept us stuck. I'm Mead.
And I'm Christy.
And in this podcast, we'll explore the stories that kept us, well, stuck, wanting to drink and not wanting to drink all at the same time.
Join us as we show you that freedom from alcohol does not have to mean a life sentence of misery and missing out,
but actually means living an authentic life full of peace, joy, and purpose.
Hello, my beautiful friend, Christy here. We are back for part 2 of our special guest hosted episodes on Dr. Lee Warren's Spiritual Self-Brain Surgery podcast. If you haven't listened to last week's episode, I encourage you to go back and listen to that one because that's going to give you the first of the 5 10 commandments of self-brain surgery. In today's episode, we're going to go through commandments 6 through 10. And I mentioned in the introduction to last week's episode to write these down, post them on your computer, have them someplace that you can easily access them because they are just a completely game-changing tool when you are rewiring your brain from the overdrinking cycle or any kind of habit that's keeping you stuck. I got an email last week asking me where the 10 commandments are written down. And so they are written for you in the show notes. So the first 5 are written in last week's show notes. The second 5 are written in this week's show notes. So if you want them written down so that you can write them out, journal over them, all of that good stuff, they are there for you. Before we dive into the second part of this conversation, though, I just want to remind you of all the exciting things that are going on in our community. We had a wonderful last masterclass for May about sobriety in your marriage. The recording is available. And then our next masterclass in June, we have our friend Christopher Cook stopping by to talk to us all about building a growth mindset for unshakable resilience. That is June 3rd. And again, that'll be recorded for our community members. And then a quick mention of all the exciting connection calls that we have added for you gals. We have added a prayer call. We're calling it Praise and Prayer with 2 of our leadership team members. We have had such incredible just gathering and encounters of the Holy Spirit when our leaders get together and pray for the women in this community. And it is a beautiful, beautiful place that you are invited to if you want prayer and you feel like you need that community. It is a wonderful, wonderful hour for that. And then if you are already alcohol free, we've added the Uncorked and Unshaken community connection call for the gals that are free from alcohol. And we've put no parameters on that. So if you are a couple months free from alcohol, if you know in your mind that you are free, then this is a call where you can gather together with other sisters who are free from alcohol and you can get to grow and get community. I think one of the really special things about the But Jesus Drank Wine community is that we have women that are on the freedom road. They are in the process of breaking free from alcohol, but we also have women that are free from alcohol, including our leadership team of over 12 women, and then more and more women pouring in every single day who just want that community, but also want to give back and encourage the women at the beginning, quote unquote, beginning of the road. And so it is a really beautiful place. It's not like any other community, gals, that we have found out there, because not only is Jesus at the center of it, but we have this beautiful mix of women who are free and are on the road. And so it's not just about Mead and I, which is such a wonderful thing because you get to get different perspectives and different stories and different types of encouragement. And there's just so many incredible connections and bonds being built in this community. And last week we had a picture of 2 of our members meeting up. I think it was in Dallas, maybe somewhere in Texas. Anyways, there's just so many great connection points now within there. And we just keep saying yes to God and yes to what you gals are asking us to do. And so thank you for that honor. And so, okay, I'm going to stop babbling, you guys, and I'm going to get into our second episode of our guest hosted 10 Commandments of Self-Brain Surgery. Please enjoy this conversation. Let us know what you think in the community, and we cannot wait to see you and talk about these 10 commandments further. Hello, friends. Welcome back to Dr. Lee's podcast. This is Christy Osborne and Mead Holland Shirley. This is our second episode that we're giving to you. If you have missed the first episode, go back and listen to that. This is our part 2. We are breaking down Dr. Lee's 10 commandments of self brain surgery, and we're giving them the spin of how we use them in our own practice as freedom from alcohol coaches. And so, in this episode, we're going to give you the second half of the commandments. So, again, if you haven't listened to the first half, go back. And we're really excited to keep going, right, babe? This is so much fun.
This is so much fun. And that first episode will really set the stage for what we're about to do here when we walk through 6 through 10 of Dr. Lee's commandments. So hit pause and go listen to that and then come back and join us. We'll get started with commandment number 6. Like we did with that last episode, we'll share the commandment and then we'll talk about how we use it. And then we'll give you a little tiny Tina for action, something you'll hear a lot of information, but information is only information. Transformation comes from doing something with the information that you get. And so we love to give these little tiny Tinas at the end of each commandment as well. So
Yeah, and if you don't remember what a tiny Tina is, because I love we always say like tiny Tina, and then we think that everyone already knows what they are, but it's a tiny new action. So it's just, as Mead said, something small that you can take away from each of these steps, especially if you're a gal that's struggling in the over drinking cycle. So yeah, let's do it.
commandment number 6, I must love tomorrow more than I hate what I feel right now. We do this all the time. This is another one where I'm like, it's got to be one of my favorites.
Yeah, me too.
It's so big in when you're stuck in an over drinking cycle.
It's so, so true. I was thinking about this one and just, gosh, I didn't even, not only did I not pay attention to like tomorrow Chrissy, I had no regard for her like whatsoever because I
Yeah.
did not know how to sit in any sort of discomfort, right? Or boredom or anything like that, small talk, whatever it was. And so it was this easy, easy, easy button, right? It was the thing that just helped me get through whatever it was, and it was with no absolutely, like, no regard whatsoever for tomorrow.
Yeah. And so much of my life was just, I always described like that. I was in that autopilot way of living where I was so stuck in the hustle and the busy and the go and the do and trying to perform and please and achieve and everything I was doing. I can't say I was doing a ton of things with intention. I was just kind of surviving in a sense. And so I was definitely not thinking about, well, if I choose to, open the bottle of wine tonight, then what will my tomorrow look like? I mean, maybe I had some sense of I'm not gonna feel so great, and definitely, I know that we used to plan around, like, if we had a girls' night out or a weekend event, like, I did kind of think about how I could compensate the next day, like, make
Yeah,
the next day easier because I knew that I wasn't gonna feel great, but that's different than
yeah.
thinking about and Dr. Lee always says this, "I am not willing to pay the tomorrow
Mhm.
like, the tomorrow tax. So if I choose to do this tonight, what does my tomorrow look like?" And I love when I have a client that I can walk through taking a 24-hour period of time. And you look at 24 hours and it's like, how much of your 24 hours is related to the glasses of wine that you had that night? And I'm not talking just about tomorrow. I'm also talking about leading up to that. That's where I have seen the most kind of breakthrough for clients. And it was really true for myself too, when I broke down how much time I was thinking about alcohol on the front end and then how much time I was recovering from, even if I didn't overdo it, it was the toll that alcohol took on me the very next day, even if I wasn't hungover. It was the shame and the blame and the, like all the headspace thing with it. So
Yeah, I have that in the book too, the time spent drinking tactic. So if you gals love what B just said, because it's so, so helpful, there is that tactic is in the book. And I was just thinking that this whole idea of like everything is temporary and the uncomfortability is like temporary or anything is hard is temporary just like didn't sink in, right? Until I've done this work on alcohol because even if you feel like you want to get through something that's hard and you're going to sacrifice part of tomorrow in order to do that, that thing that you're sitting in that you want to like fast forward through or numb out or whatever it is temporary. And I know that that is something that's so easy to just say, but I think one of the things that we keep getting to see in our community especially because we have this like ongoing message board situation, right? Is the live as it happens people that will come in, say that they have a craving for alcohol, for example, and then they come back 20, 30 minutes later to the chat and they've overcome that craving because it was temporary, right? And then they're not
Yep.
paying that tomorrow tax. And so everything is temporary. All the hard stuff is temporary. You don't have to numb it out and you definitely don't have to sacrifice anything about tomorrow to get through anything because, and the other thing too, right? It's like God's with us in all of it, in all of it. So if you're experiencing something hard and discomfort, and we talk about this so much on our podcast, is just go to God with it. Just go sit with him. You always talk about going and sitting in the garden with him. I love that so much. And you don't have to sacrifice your tomorrow, right? You just
Yeah.
don't. I'm so glad we don't have to do that anymore.
I know. And it's also like interesting to note. I think that we live in a world that makes it really easy to not have to be uncomfortable with all of our immediate gratification things. And of course, wine falls into that category as one of those easy buttons, as I call them. Like, we're not, I mean, you can just have something show up on your door, whatever you need. You just have it show up on your doorstep. We're not used to being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And probably like the greatest superpower that I never would have known that would have come from finding freedom from alcohol is my ability to sit in the suck, as we've talked about in the community. Someone coined that in the community, sit in the suck. Is my ability to be comfortable in the discomfort of growth. So,
Yeah.
like, it might be hard to go to an event and where maybe I have social anxiety, so to speak. It's going to be a little bit hard to make small talk and I'm going to be a little bit nervous. But if I can be comfortable with that discomfort, I know the next time it's going to be a little bit easier. And I'm
Mhm.
talking about this from the lens of, going without alcohol. We talk about you're going to an event for the first time without alcohol. There's going to be a little bit of discomfort with that, maybe a lot of discomfort, but that discomfort is going to lead to growth and resilience and an ability to then the next time do differently. And so, kind of really focusing on the long game versus what do I think I need right now, or like the habitual response to grab that makes everything more bearable for 20 minutes,
Yeah.
um, and the price that you pay. I mean, it comes down to like simple cost benefit analysis, truly.
Yeah.
When you break it down, what is the cost and what is the benefit? But so often, I think when we're stuck in that drinking cycle, we're just not intentionally breaking it down and paying attention to what that looks like. We're not thinking about tomorrow, maybe. I wasn't for sure.
Yeah. That's so good. So what's our Tina?
But Tina, or commandment number 6, is play the tape forward tactic. This will not be, you'll probably guess what we're doing with this. If we're thinking about loving tomorrow more than what we feel right now, we're thinking about playing the tape forward. When I go home tonight, or when Sunday fun day after church, and I'm gonna, go out to brunch and I'm gonna have those 2 glasses of wine, I'm gonna play that tape forward. What is the rest of my day gonna look like? What is the rest of my night gonna look like? What is tomorrow going to look like? And how do I want it to look? Do I want it to look like those things? So you get to play the tape forward if you choose to drink. Like, what will that look like? And also, what could it look like if I'm not drinking? So I find, Chrissy, do you find this with your clients? Like, some can play the tape forward from the sense of like, this is what it will look like if I drink. But others like kind of play the forward and they're more motivated by what it will look like if I don't drink. Do you find a difference in like client preferences with that?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's harder to see the what it will look like if I don't drink, if you don't have that data because you haven't done it. And be open to the fact that you might just feel amazing. And I would just love to give some examples of our own tapes too and what they look like. When I was playing the tape forward in the beginning, when I was, really knee deep in cravings, my tape looked like I would promise myself I would have one drink, then I would probably finish the bottle, then I would wake up at 3 a.m. feeling absolutely horrible. I would fall back asleep right before the alarm woke me up to take the kids to school. I'd missed that workout class that I'd already paid for, and I would feel so awful, promise myself that I wouldn't drink, and then it would obviously all start over at 5 or 6 p.m., right? And like that is what the tape looked like if I chose to have the drinks. If I chose not to have the drinks, and again, like I just said, this was after gathering data, I learned this is that I slept really well.
Yeah.
Had more patience with my kids the next morning. I was able to get all my work done and it wasn't so stressful, right? So, like,
Yeah.
yeah,
At the end of the day, it's about being intentional and choosing our response and breaking. I mean, I think to me, like what rings loud and clear is like it's disrupting that habitual response that we're so in the habit of doing and being intentional about what do we we get to choose how we spend our evenings, how we spend our next days, what our mind's going to be filled with. And I know for me, one of the worst places to be was when I was stuck in I wake up the next day and like, crap, like Britney Spears song played in my head. Oops, I did it again. Let me just tell you what really makes a hangover worse than Britney Spears, Oops, I did it again, is playing on top of your pounding headache at 3 a.m. and your cotton mouth.
Oh my gosh,
No,
that's so great. We never have to do that ever again.
we never have to do that again. I never have to hear that song again either. But yeah.
I still like that song. Also, if you love this like chat about playing the tape forward, there is a whole chapter of craving tactics. It's chapter 13 in Love Life Sober, a 40-day alcohol fast. So if you love this one, there's so much more of this.
Yes. Okay. Number 7.
We are on a roll.
I must stop making an operation out of everything. I just had the thought that God would like to say to me, for me, he might like to say to me, you don't have to make an operation out of everything.
Why are we giving them
But, like,
ideas? Why are
we're
we
like,
giving them ideas?
or like when my teenage daughter is like, Mom, it's not that deep. Like that's what this kind of reminds me of, which is kind of cool because it does wake me up to I must stop making an operation out of everything. Yeah, like also at the end of the day, it's about the alcohol. It's not about the alcohol. We don't have to make it so complicated. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah. So when we're talking about not making an operation out of everything, there's two things that come to mind. The first one is, hello, moderating your alcohol,
Yes.
taking an operation out of this thing that is not supposed to be hard, but you are going head to head with an addictive substance and you're trying to outsmart it. And that is just like probably not possible for a lot of us, right? Like this is why in the book I call the people that can moderate their alcohol moderation unicorns. And I also think of if so their big alcohol is now like becoming aware of all of us, right? And so the sober curious space and all of this stuff. And so they're even trying to get on this board of if you moderate your alcohol, then it's not going to be as bad for you. And Diageo, which is one of the big alcohol conglomerates, did this advertisement not too long ago where they showed this girl walking through the bar and having a drink and then have a glass of water next and then have another drink and then eat something and then have a non-alcoholic drink. And I just watched this advert and I was like, this is ridiculous because it's totally not taking into account that first drink makes you want more drinks because that's what alcohol does. And we don't need to go on a whole tangent about how addictive it is, but moderating is making an operation out of everything,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, because also what is your definition of moderation and how do you
Yeah.
know that you're successfully doing it? When I was trying to quote unquote moderate, when I was taking the breaks, the 30-day fast, the things that I did for cleanses and whatnot, I was thinking about alcohol more during those times as I was trying to moderate it, which does create this whole, I mean, just, yeah, a whole operation out of it where it is way more complicated and way noisier and just worse. Just more miserable when you have all of that going on. So the idea of moderation, I think, is just, I mean, obviously we have episodes devoted just to that topic alone and we could go on and on, but yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah. And then I think that in not making an operation out of everything, if you are new to the alcohol free journey or trying to find freedom from alcohol, is making an operation out of everything by future tripping, right? You're just making it really, really complicated if you're constantly thinking about that 40th birthday or that vacation or that spring break or that Christmas or that whatever. If you're constantly thinking of, I'm not going to be able to handle this not drinking because of this thing that's days, weeks, months, years in advance, like you are making this, my friend, hear us when we say this, you're making it so much harder on yourself and you don't need to do that. So I just have this verse here, Matthew 6:34, which says, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. This is Jesus speaking. Each day has enough trouble of its own. And that's what I think we're not doing, right? When we're future tripping. So that's another thing. And this is, yeah, I mean, we talk all about this on the podcast and in the community, but you don't need to make this finding freedom from alcohol harder on yourself. It can be this journey of grace and self compassion and not of so much stress, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I knew what life looked like with alcohol. I didn't know. I mean, I was a social drinker, so to speak, for 20 plus years. I didn't really know what vacation or girl dates out or dinners or I didn't know what those things were without alcohol because they were just always part of those occasions, some more tied to in different years than others. But we don't have to make any grand declarations about like
Yeah.
what I'm going to be doing at this thing and how am I going to solve that or whatever. What if it's possible that taking a break from alcohol actually does give me some of the benefits, the things that I'm looking for? What would life be like without alcohol? You don't have to go if I'm going to be, and this is where we see that trap all the time with from a traditional maybe recovery lens when it comes to talking about alcohol. If I'm not drinking, then I'm successful. And if I'm drinking, I'm not successful. Instead, we like talk about like exploring your relationship to alcohol and looking at what could be possible without it with that curiosity lens, like collecting that data first and then go from there and see. And that was kind of the tiny Tina that we had as part of this is commit to a 40-day fast through Christy's book, Love Life Sober. Join us in the community. We're running fast in there all the time and we're coaching through that. And what if life without alcohol could be enjoyable or all of that peace and that joy that you're craving? What if it's possible? But you don't know if you already go into it with this like, it's going to be this, or I'm worried about that, or it's got to be forever, whatever those thoughts are.
Yeah. Love that.
Number 8, I must not perpetuate or start harmful generational thought or behavioral issues in my life or family. My kids lately have been saying, sounds like that's an issue, not an ish me. Sorry.
Please don't teach that to my people because I will hear it nonstop.
So funny. Hey, can you pick up your shoes that are like right in the middle of the floor and then properly like, that sounds like that's an issue, not an ish me. It said to a sister. Anyway, I must not perpetuate or start harmful generational thought or behavioral issues in my life or family. Yeah, let's talk about that one.
Yeah. So I mean, what every time I hear Dr. Lee talk about this, I just think about my own family, obviously, as we probably all do, right? When we hear him talk about this. And I talk about this in the book that my mom ended up starting drinking much later in life when I was already an adult. And it just completely changed her behavior. And that was a result of a lot of her own generational trauma and things. But I specifically remember having that thought on March 9th, 2020, the day that I decided not to drink anymore was that I didn't want to pass this down to my kids. And I didn't want this to be their story about me. And I wanted to break the cycle and I didn't want this to keep going and going. And the traditional recovery methodologies, a lot of them will tell you that if you are struggling with alcohol, it is very much linked to genetics, right? Like, how often do we hear, oh, my grandfather was an alcoholic or my dad was an alcoholic. That's why I'm struggling with this thing. And the beauty of the way that God has wired our brains is that it's only one small part of the story. So, of course, like we want to say right now, like if this is something that you're struggling with, if you're struggling with alcohol, let's take a look at this together so you don't have to pass it down. And the beauty and the hope in that is that if you feel like you are saddled with something from your family past, and this is the whole point of why we're talking about this, right? You can change your thinking to change your drinking. Or as Dr. Lee says, you can change your mind to change your behavior and your life and all of this. So yes, don't start anything, right? Don't start anything because I mean, why? I mean, right? Why would we want to do that? But also if you feel like you're carrying it, like there's so much hope for you.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. This is one of those surprise gifts of doing this work that we always say, like we get to do, is we can break those intergenerational patterns of behavior that do. I used to tell myself one of the stories that kept me stuck before was that I come from a long line of anxious people. And so therefore, I am an anxious person. And I'm speaking that over myself and telling that as truth to myself about who I am. Guess what ends up becoming my reality? I lived as a very anxious person. And it's so easy. I can look back to my mom, to my grandma. I can look back and I can see where that was just kind of like handed down to me. And what's crazy is finding freedom from alcohol. I mean, I had the ability to change that. Obviously, the Lord did the transforming of me on the inside of my heart and all of that for this to be true. But I am not an anxious person anymore. But there's so
Hallelujah. Praise the Lord, right?
I mean, it's crazy. I wish like this is where sometimes I'm like, I wish and I don't wish at the same time that there were like that I had a video or like a video of myself from before. If y'all could have known, like we always say, like in our community, they see us as how we are right now. But if you had known me 7 years ago, you would have been like, wow, she is a tight wound, chihuahua-esque, like type A. And I don't think that fits anymore. And that is because doing this work paying attention, renewing our minds, thinking about our thinking, changing our mind, to change our life, changing our thinking to change our drinking. We have that ability to break these patterns, not just around, am I an alcoholic? And so therefore I have a long history of this in my family. And so therefore I must be. And so now this is my like curse. It doesn't have to be that way. So
So
great.
freeing. So, so freeing. What's our tiny Tina for this one?
So for Tina, for our tiny new action for this one, what are the I am statements that you are making about yourself that you're speaking over yourself as true? And are they true? Is that who you are? So when I said I am anxious, I come from a long line of alcoholics. So maybe I am an alcoholic. This is another thing when I was breaking up with alcohol. Like I'm the life of the party. I'm the fun, easy going,
Oh,
light
yeah.
one. Like
I'm the hostess.
I'm the hostess, I'm the entertainer, I am all these things. Turns out none of those things were true, but as long as I was believing those, they absolutely directed my life, created my outcomes for my life, but also influenced future generations, i.e. my children and their experience of me. So I would just say get really curious about what are those I am statements and then ask if they're true and what is true. Like what I am statements would you speak over yourself now?
And there's also, again, a list of this in the book of what God calls us, right? God calls and says that we are, which is so, so helpful. I think there's like a whole conversation that we don't have to dive into right now, but we have talked about on the podcast before is if your identity as a drinker feels really, really heavy for you or it's something that you can't break free from because it has all of those I am statements attached, like you said, like I am the hostess, I am the party girl, da 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 da. Like there are parts of that that might need to be grieved and let go of, and that's okay. And so ultimately start looking at who God says you are, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So good. Can't get any better than that.
Yeah, love that.
Okay. For number 9, I must believe that I'm getting better at what I'm doing.
I love
This,
that.
I know. Yeah. This is, I mean, gosh, like we say that about everything, but it's true. Oh, this is so good.
This
All
is
right.
why when Dr. Lee was like, "Do you guys wanna host a guest episode?" I was like, "Yes, and I wanna do the 10 commandments, but I wanna, like, do our own freestyle on it because it's so good." This one, gosh, there's so much to say about I must believe that I'm getting better at what I'm doing. The first thing I wanna say is that if you have been struggling with alcohol in a traditional recovery method and you don't feel like you're getting better at it, look at some of the things that might be holding you back. One of these things that we talk about, one of our most popular podcast recordings was you don't have to count days. If counting days feels like it means you're not making progress because you're always going back to day one, don't go back to day one, right? Like you
Yep.
don't have to do that. There's a link in the book to a personal celebration tracker. We talk about celebration all the time. And so if the way that you're doing your own alcohol journey isn't working for you and you don't feel like you're getting better, take a look at some of these things. You don't have to go back to day one. You don't even necessarily have to count days. And there are such beautiful examples in our community of women that are getting better at this. And this conversation actually came up twice with two separate gals where they were like, I feel like I have to make it to 100 days, or I feel like I have to make it to a
Mhm.
year. And
Yep.
we become so familiar with these women and their stories. And I was just like, babe, like you are so much further along. You've gotten so much better at this, not because of your day count, but
Yeah.
because you just told me about that huge mindset shift that you had and
Yeah.
that you're viewing alcohol a different way and you're desiring it less and you don't want it when you're stressed out. Like that is massive, massive, massive progress. It's not necessarily about how many days that you have alcohol free. Okay. And then just one more thing. And I love to always use the example of maybe you call it a people mover. I call it a flatillator, but it's the thing at the airport where it moves you from one side of the airport to the other. It's a flat escalator. And that is what your
We
freedom.
call it a moving sidewalk.
Okay, well, I call it a flatillator. And when you are in your freedom journey, once you step onto that people mover, whatever you want to call it, you're always moving forward. You're always moving forward if you're trying, even if you're having growth points. We call them growth points, which is like having a drink on a day that you said you weren't going to because let's mine that for data and figure out why. That's progress because you're learning, right? And so you're always moving forward. Sometimes you're taking steps, sometimes you're standing still on that flatillator, but you're always moving forward if you're doing the mind work, the mindset work that we talk about while you're on this journey. Okay, sorry. I got
Yeah.
really excited about that one.
Yeah. The courage that takes to start this journey I'm going to explore my relationship to alcohol. I'm going to start this. And you step onto that moving sidewalk. You are going to have moments where you're running that moving sidewalk, or you're going to be
Yeah.
walking it, or you're going to have moments where you're sitting down and
Yeah.
feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm still stuck. How many times do we hear that? I'm still stuck.
Last night.
Stuck. Yeah. And it's no, you've started this journey and you are learning. But when you are narrowly focused on a day count or getting to 100 days, like when your success 100% relies on your whether you're drinking or not drinking, then we fall and we rise to that. Whereas we like to focus people on all of the tiny little shifts that you're making,
Yeah.
all of the tiny little areas where you're making progress, where you're growing, where you're learning, what you're discovering, what God is revealing to you, how you're growing more, more connected to the Lord. You're creating space for Him in a new way. All of those little tiny things, they add up to that massive change over time. But it's really hard to see that when we're just like hyper focused on I'm either drinking or I'm not drinking. And so when we talk about like Colin's kindergarten teacher, I will never forget this. She used to say she had all of these like little fun sayings. And one of them was practice makes permanent. She didn't believe there was anything, no such thing as perfect. I agree with her. And she used to say practice makes permanent. And so what we practice, we get better at doing. And Dr. Lee talked a lot about this for better or for worse. If we're stuck in the drinking cycle, if we keep practicing being stuck in the drinking cycle, we get better at doing that. But if we turn towards this, I'm jumping on the moving sidewalk. I'm starting my exploration of my relationship to alcohol, and I'm going to start paying attention to all of the other things that are influencing my relationship to alcohol and where I'm growing and learning and discovering. I mean, that's why how often do you hear me say, like, this is a discovery journey? This is not a recovery journey. The way that we, in this space, the way that we talk about it, there's so much to discover.
Yeah.
And that's the really cool thing about doing this work. And then celebrating those new neural pathways that we're practicing and that we're creating when we're learning, like, does alcohol really help me relax in the evening? Is it really a reward? And now I'm starting to see it's maybe not. I have proof now that says that maybe it's not. I'm going to celebrate that it used to be like 10 out of 10, that it definitely helps me relax. I believe that. But now I'm seeing 7 out of 10. Like I'm starting to see a little hole in that. I'm going to celebrate that because that is a proof of progress. What I like to call a POP, POP, a proof of progress. You are making progress. And that is something that I think is so instrumental in staying on that moving sidewalk, not jumping off of that moving sidewalk and continuing in this journey. It's looking for the abundance versus where the mind always wants to go to, like, what we're not doing and where we are stuck and the lack and what we're trying to solve. Instead, we shift our focus towards what are we doing? What are we discovering? What are we learning? And how is that influencing my relationship with alcohol? What's possible from here?
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. And that's our tiny Tina right there, is looking at the proofs of progress, right? And there's so many different ways that we can do that. One of them, and we have a whole podcast episode on this, is like alcohol free firsts. And there's a little download that you can get with the book of a whole list of alcohol free firsts that you can mark off and celebrate. And this is what we just love to do in our community all the time. It's just celebrate. It's what we open up so many of our fast calls with, right? Of like, what's the proof of progress? What's your pop this week? And so it's so good.
Yeah. For example, you showed up for this call. Okay, you drank last night and you didn't want to. So you're coming to this call and you're feeling like you were not successful, except for the fact that you're showing up for this call. That
Yeah.
takes courage. That's saying, I'm still on this moving sidewalk. I'm not getting off. So we're going to celebrate that pop. So make a celebration brainstorm. Celebration brainstorm all your pops from your journey. That's what helps keep us going and that makes us better at what we're doing. Number 10, I must understand that thoughts become things.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so good. I never ever knew how to pay attention to my thoughts before. I didn't even think about my thoughts, right? Which is so silly to say, but I never ever was thinking about what I was thinking about. And so this is just such great encouragement to pay attention to what stories you're telling yourself. This is the name of our podcast, you guys, is But Jesus Drank Wine and Other Stories That Kept Us Stuck. We tell ourselves so many stories, so many thoughts that then end up informing how we show up in the world, right? And getting really, really crystal clear about what thoughts are true and what are no longer serving us is just the biggest life hack. And it's so cool because I always say this, that when we've been given this kind of like struggle with alcohol, it ends up being such a blessing because I think that when you start paying attention to what the craving voice is saying, you can start getting good at paying attention to what the thoughts are saying, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm just reminded of one of the thoughts that kept me stuck. One of my thoughts that became a thing was when I would tell myself when I was feeling that discomfort going to church, having staying up with friends and keeping the kids away past their bedtime and going to church the next morning and like, oh my gosh, can anyone tell that I had too much wine last night or whatever? And I would think the thought, but Jesus drank wine. And that became a thing in my life where it kind of excused what I was doing. So what I was doing was I was ignoring that nudge, that prompting from the Holy Spirit that, hey, pay attention to this. This isn't right. I was using a thought and justifying it when really that was an opportunity for me to pay attention to what I was doing and I didn't even really know that that was something that had so much power in keeping me stuck in that drinking cycle, for example, that story. It's so, so important I didn't know I was separate from my thoughts, my thinking. I didn't know that was something that we could pay attention to. I didn't know about metacognition. For sure, there were all of these stories that were just spinning in the background, directing my life. And that's the really cool thing because it doesn't just relate to alcohol and what I was telling myself about alcohol. And so in that moment when I'm justifying what I'm doing, but Jesus drank wine, that wasn't really helping me get unstuck. It was making it easier to stay stuck. Whereas I also realized the benefits of alcohol, like it helps me relax. There's a reward for it. It helps me with social anxiety. It helps me for connection. All of those things that were not true. But the more I was not paying attention to them, the more they just directed everything. They directed my actions. I think that is something that I learned that was just like, wait a minute, what I think about is what how I feel, and that influences and affects actions and reactions and how I show up. Once you understand that, you realize too that, like, for me, I realized that this wasn't a behavior thing that I had to pay attention to. It was a mind and a heart situation. As long as I desired alcohol, I was never going to be truly free from it. So I just love, and this is something that I remember it was one of our TMP gals, one of our missing piece girls in coaching when she was like, oh my gosh, Philippians 4:8. Think about whatever is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, worthy of praise. She was like, oh my gosh, it starts with whatever is true.
Yeah.
When we think about what is true, when we renew our minds and we come back to what is true, like true comes first. And there was so much that showed up as true that I was not paying attention to. But yeah, we can. That's the gift of doing this work. So for our tiny Tina, for this one, what are the stories that you're telling yourself?
Yeah.
How are you saying that it helps for connection, for reward, for relaxation, for anxiety? What also are the stories that you're telling yourself about yourself? Like, I know that I was in a place where it was like, I'm never going to get this, or
Yeah.
I'm not very disciplined, or, so typical weed. Oops, I did it again. Like, so typical. And then what are the stories that you're telling yourself about who God is? That was the gift of doing this work that I never saw coming. Was then being able to say, like, oh, I also have all these stories about God, who I thought God was. And turns out none of those stories were true. I thought he was, a dictator, authoritarian, always mad at me for all the things that I was doing wrong. And so that just continued to keep me stuck. That was another way of my thinking becoming a thing in my life where I was just continuing to stay stuck. So what are those stories that you're telling yourself about alcohol, about yourself, and about God? What is true? We take those stories and then we actually land on the truth of that. Imagine stepping into a vibrant, warm community where faith, friendship, and freedom from alcohol all come together. That's exactly what you'll experience in the But Jesus Drank Wine community.
Each week, our members gather for connection calls that feel like a breath of fresh air, a time to share, grow, and support one another.
With an encouraging leadership team, a dedicated prayer request space, and connection opportunities in every time zone, you don't have to walk this journey alone.
Plus, we bring you masterclasses with expert guests, optional book clubs and Bible studies, and so much more.
And for those ready to go even deeper, we offer a small group coaching space called The Missing Piece. With weekly recorded coaching calls, it's a supportive place for women committed to breaking free from alcohol.
We're here to hold space for sober and sober-curious women who love Jesus or are eager to reconnect with him. Wherever you are on your path, you'll feel seen, supported, and strengthened here.
As one member described, quote, "The BJDW community is unique because there's a connection between faith and freedom from alcohol that I haven't been able to find in any other online space or through my church."
Ready to join the sisterhood? Head over to butjesusdrankwine.com/community or click the link in the show notes to learn more. We can't wait to meet you. Yeah, that's so good, babe. That's so good. There's more about that in the book, Love Life Sober. And then this is what we're doing every single day in our community. We're looking at the stories that we're telling ourselves. We're looking at the stories that we're telling ourselves about God. And gosh, there's just so much beauty and growth and transformation like happening in there. I think of just even recently, some gal posted about forgiveness, and it's just exactly what you just said, right? About who are you telling yourself that God is? Is this person that's disappointed in you and angry with you all the time? Or is he someone with unlimited compassion, patience, and forgiveness for you, right? And this is just one of our leadership team members just posted this beautiful thing about him being forgiving. And so, yeah, that's what we're doing all the time in the space that you and I hang out in.
Yeah. And those that, like, I gave those categories, like, what are the stories I'm telling myself about alcohol, about myself, about God? By the way, like, those are not categories that exist separately from each other. All three of those categories influence your relationship to alcohol.
Yeah.
It does. Like, it's all woven together. And having a space where you can look at the stuff and be curious about the stuff and ask the questions and be honest about what you're thinking and be honest about what those stories are and begin to, like, oh gosh, like, okay, if that's not God's voice that I'm hearing, like, whose voice is that? And oh, that makes sense. Having a place where you can do that vulnerably, courageously, like, honestly before God and with other people, like, so important. And I think that's what I just love more than anything about the work that we get to do, is that we get to do that in community with other women in that way, because this is not complicated work. It's like changing our mind to change our life. It's not complicated, but it's not easy. It's hard. And everything is easier when we get to do it alongside of other people. So
Yeah, that's so true. So, if you gals want to hang out with us some more, if you want to learn more about what we're doing, our podcast will hopefully, Dr. Lee, I'm sure he will link it in the show notes. It's called But Jesus Drank Wine and Other Stories That Kept Us Stuck. Come listen to us. Dr. Lee's made an appearance on that. It was one of my favorite episodes of all time. We also have, as we've been talking about, our community where we have connection calls, we have prayer request space, we have a worship list, we have, oh my gosh, amazing master classes and speakers going on. We also have a private space of gals that really want to hunker down and look at their drinking and want coaching, and that's called The Missing Piece. And so we coach in that group. We also coach through my book, Love Life Sober, a 40-day alcohol fast, several times a year. We're wrapping up our Lent fast as we speak. I can't believe it. And so there's just so much incredible things going on in our community, which hopefully we'll have a link to as well. And then if you want to get the book, it's called Love Life Sober, a 40-day alcohol fast to rediscover your joy, improve your health, and renew your mind. And it's pink. So yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Lee, for letting us come and have these conversations. We love your work so much. We're always talking about you in our community.
biggest fangirls
ever. And
right there.
thank you so much for listening. And we hope that we get to meet some of you Dr. Lee listeners really soon. Bye, y'all.
Bye, y'all. Wait, did you just say y'all?
Yeah, I got it from you.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Bye, friends.
Bye, friends. Thank you so much for joining us again this week. You can find all of our episodes at butjesusdrankwine.com, and be sure to follow us over on Instagram, Love Life Sober, and I'm Not Sober, I'm Free.
To learn more about what we do, you can visit our websites, meethollandshirley.com and lovelifesober.com.
Take a screenshot of this podcast and share it with a friend or two.
And don't forget to subscribe to our pod so you don't have to worry about missing a single episode. And if you love what we're doing, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify.
This helps more women who are feeling stuck and alone in the overdrinking cycle find hope and encouragement.
Thanks, ladies. We so appreciate you, and we'll see you next Monday.